My own story of going off grid and leaving my hometown is one story of millions. There are many untold stories, and there are many living these new lives. The American refugee experience is one way to describe it. It's not the only way to describe what can be described as this mass migration of human beings, Americans, from one part of America to another. The different reasons why people are going off grid or moving to new places. Maybe not off grid, but maybe in search of a new environment for them that is right for them. The other thing to take into consideration is that as human beings, we go through changes in our own lives, just like the sun goes through its own changes. And so there may be times where it's right for us to be at a certain place and to be at a certain job for maybe 10 years or 15 years. And then there's time for carving your own path in this world or building your own home, getting out of the city. Not just doing the same old, going to the shopping mall and being a consumer, but going out in nature. Or for some men, learning how to hunt. For those that are drawn to that. I'm not as drawn to that, but for a lot of men, it's like that's part of being a man, is being able to go out and have the right to hunt your own meat. Same goes for fishing. And so many other things. Harvesting rainwater. Growing food. The art of cultivating fruit trees. My grandfather had many fruit trees when I grew up on the farm on 40 acres. I remember living on 40 acres as a little boy before the divorce between my grandparents and before my grandparents passed away and before all that wealth evaporated into thin air through the squabblings of the and now a lot of family memories are coming up. But what I will say is that my own story, at least on my mother's side, is like the death of the farm, the breakup of the family, the disappearance of the wealth, and then everyone becoming refugees and spreading out. And nature is like that, in that families may start and they spread out across the globe. And being that I'm an expression of a lot of genetics from around the planet, living here today in America where there is so much racial tension, where the lack of my pureness means a great deal to people for reasons I will never really truly understand, other than the mind control that is out there. Yet I'm criticized for pointing out that there is mind control. But I think that there is mind control right now taking place that is directing racial groups against each other and putting us into a state of fear. It is affecting our world. It is a form of evil. It is a cancer. It is an evil within our communities. It is an evil on our planet. It is an evil within government. It is what drives the genocides. It is what drives the mass murder. The hatred that they ferment is what maintains that silence when people are silent, when millions are murdered. What's safe about cities in a day and age where people allow this behavior? Long term down the line, knowing how karma works, America's not safe. And the American government isn't doing what it's doing for America. America's been under a form of control for some time. So we're living out an in-game scenario as they destroy our economy, lead us to World War III, and I believe the unthinkable could happen on our borders, within our borders. It's not going to be what people think. People have put all their attention on illegal immigration and ISIS. They're forgetting. They're forgetting that America didn't do this alone in the Middle East. China and Russia are rising by design, and while they prepare for war, they sell land to China, and they invite the Russians and other countries, special forces units, to train with the United States, foreign troop drills in the United States, in the event that our own government can't control us. they have troops from other countries to call. You know, so I've been called to Colorado for a reason. I look at what's happening in American cities right now. I see what's happened to a lot of women in today's society that have been taught not to trust men, to hate men. It's really unnatural. For those of you that have had families and have been able to have that experience, you need to understand that for those of us that have been living in the cities the last few decades, like I have, for those of us that have already had our families broken up decades ago, like I did, you know, the whole death of the farm thing, that was 1993. I was 13 then. That was, I grew up in a way, you could say, I grew up fast, and I have had to move around a lot. And even before the age of 18, I had to move around a lot. So I've seen different cultures. I've never wanted a vulture on those cultures, but I've definitely seen different cultures and different forms of mind control and people stuck in their box of illusion of separation, religion, race, class. And in Portland, where they have this stupid-ass TV show based called Portlandia, there's a cult in Portland. You're either a hipster, Portlander, or you're trash. I denounced that, and I left Portland. I left my hometown because cancer took over Portland. The true darker aspects, I apologize if people take this the wrong way, but it's not my problem. The darker aspects of this Anglo mentality of just take over an area and destroy it, like what we're being accused of, that's what I left in Portland. And because of that greed, because of the racism in Portland, where you just have one bloodline come in and push out the darker skin, the olive skin, the Hispanic, the black, all of us together, and you just see this like Irish-Scottish domination. I don't understand how Devin and Maria Martinez don't understand me. Have they not looked at my commentary on what happened to Portland? Or do I have to go over it again? I don't want to go over all the pain of what I saw. But what I saw was the machine taking over nature in one of the most horrifying forms I've ever seen. And that's why I documented it in Portland, because I wanted people around the nation to see what was happening to Portland, to warn them that this could also happen to you. But I also did it, Devin and Maria, because I wanted to warn people to not go to Portland. Because if Portland's going to end up being a greedy, somewhat racial supremacist town based on who has the money to afford it, big real estate, who has the money. That's why I warn you guys. Don't come into a mentality of owning the rich and those with tens of thousands of dollars can move here, because eventually you will be priced out as well. And you will see other forms of problems. If there's crime and issues with water and trash, deal with them. But people should be taking a lesson from some of these other communities of what they don't want. What you don't want to do is become delusional. So there are many delusional people today, whether you're in the country or rural communities. And so I'm not going to plan to live my life in these large cities. I've lived in Dallas now for a year. I worked a job there for a video production company. That was before I went off grid. I didn't come from Oregon initially. I came from Dallas, where I was working just outside of downtown. And I don't know what it was about what I saw in Texas, but that's what really did it for me the first time, where it's like, I'm going off grid. I don't care if I'm cold. I don't care if I'm without internet. After what I experienced and saw out of that mass, like, wow, that's like the fourth largest city in America. Like Dallas, Texas bothered me, folks. And I feel like I came here to heal the first time from that sickness of that city. Dallas, Texas, I mean, I don't even want to even go down that rabbit hole. But what I do know is that this land is healing. And it's important to travel to healing places, not just specifically this one. There's great places in Arizona I'd like to see. There's other places in America I'd like to travel to and live off the grid and live in nature and see how other people live off the grid and learn new things and new philosophies and spiritual teachings. You know, I've had an invitation to go down to places in New Mexico, and I may consider that. Now that my RV is legal, I took care of everything yesterday. It's just a matter of affording the gas money on a limited budget. But I'm totally legal to go anywhere in America, even though for now I think I'm going to stay in the Southwest. But I'm traveling to these places for a reason, and I feel like a scout, and I'm letting people know why I travel, what some of these places are like, and honestly, what drives me. What I feel has driven me out of urban lifestyle, where I used to bus tables, at a 4-star restaurant and wait tables at places like the Olive Garden and other things that I did in my early 20s. And I worked at a grocery store. I don't talk about my past, but I know what it's like to work full-time and rent an apartment and feel how worthless it all is. To feel drained. Now, I've already talked about that in like the first 5 to 8 years of my television show, Outside the Box. The off-the-grid freedom thing is really what marks the last few years. And it's really the last year that I've been I've been crawling out of a hole economically with my part-time job at amtvmedia.com. I don't have to be on welfare. Not that I was on welfare before, but I was hurting before I had the RV, when all I had was my truck and a homemade teardrop camper. And I was in Portland, and I was around all these people that obviously did not like the look of my lack of wealth. They looked at me like they hated me. They looked at me like they wanted me dead. And I felt this invasion take over Portland. And because I didn't have any money or wealth or family left alive, I had nowhere to go. I was on my own. And despite the fact that I did a TV show for years, because it's controversial and some would say conspiratorial, I was judged, and people would say, Alex, we'd like to help you. We really think the government, though, would kick down our doors if we were to help you. I was told this countless times. I lived through this. And the whole time I lived through this, neither my mother or my father, neither my Afghan father or my white mother, neither of them have really ever shown true care for who I am or what I'm doing. And for most of these years, I haven't talked to any family at all. Because the first authorities I rejected on this planet were their authorities, their false authority over me, and their psychological abuse. I rebelled against it, and I talked about some of it in a prior podcast, and I chose to not be like my parents. I saw both my parents were very different. They were both very similar in their attempts to mind-fuck me. And so my escape from my parents is part of my survival story, whether they like me saying that or not. And as a result of that, and the path that I'm on for years, I haven't talked to them. I've been in this on my own. Family doesn't talk to me. There really isn't much family. And on the father's side, even though I may be unique, they do not. Despite the stuff I've talked about regarding the Middle East and Afghanistan, they do not talk to me. Because I'm seen as someone that just goes too far. Don't ever say that's what this is about. That's just too far. And I don't subscribe to any religion. And so, because of the uniqueness of the path that I'm on, I walk alone and I've gone through some of these things. It doesn't mean that I'm a bad person. It doesn't mean that I'm running around creating negative karma. It means that because the stuff that I talk about on this YouTube channel, it alienates me, and I don't care. I've been doing this for years. The only reason I even was able to afford the RV and raise money for other things and other positive things that have happened is because of my YouTube channel. So back to good luck, bad luck, there are some ways people in this society punish me because of what I put out on this YouTube channel. But there's also ways that the universe backs me up and provides for me because of what I'm doing on this YouTube channel. And that's why I'm not going to be afraid of death. And that's why if death comes, or the threat of death comes, I'm going to face it. I'm going to face it only because the hundreds of things I've already faced and the hundreds of things I've already overcome and the hundreds of synchronicities I've already experienced and the miracles in my life and the prayer to the Great Spirit. I don't need Devin Pignon of San Luis. I don't need Maria Martinez of San Luis or anyone else to see inside my soul and just understand who they're dealing with. Someone that's not an outlaw. Someone that ultimately feels like they've been drawn here to Costilla County to bring people together when the time comes. And I'm not talking about a revolution with the U.S. government. If anything, if it comes down to anything physically, a defensive posture against an invading force, and not necessarily our own government. I've been drawn to Colorado for a reason, and there was a reason why I was pushed out of Portland. I wasn't meant to be there, and I wasn't meant to be enabled for my situation to get any better. I left here in 2013 after experiencing some time here, and I went back to Portland to see what had changed, and it was like a nightmare. I chose to go back to see how deep the rabbit hole could go, looking at it, the matrix, and I started to talk about Portland being a microcosm for the whole world. The problems, the sex trafficking industry, which is getting worse. Even stories emerging of women getting other young girls, underage girls, into the child sex prostitution ring. And people in the city becoming horrified, going, where is this evil coming from? And I would talk about the old Portland, what was done to the Native Americans when they came to Portland, when the first Portlanders, colonialists, as some would call them. The plutocracy is another. They had their own little secret society, like their own little, think tank group where they laid out Portland in their image with Masons. Not that all Masons are involved in a grand conspiracy or are power trippers, but Portland was set up to be Dante's Inferno. It's something that mirrors gangs of New York. They were Shanghai kidnapping men that got too drunk that came in to burn their money on the illegal casinos and whorehouses. They made their money logging in Oregon. They made their money fishing. They made their money as miners. And they came to Portland, the Vegas of the Northwest at that time in the 1860s and 70s, and it was hell on earth. This was shortly after the Native Americans were brutally removed from the land through the smallpox epidemic that killed 90% of the native population in less than a year. The Willamette River became known as the River of Death. Since that time, mankind has set up their whorehouses, their strip clubs, their drug dens, their fancy restaurants, their hotels, all different forms of vice, their casinos, and so many people have suffered in Portland since then, and that's what I talked about. And I feel tapped into that history, and I feel like I understand why Portland is going through what it's going through, and it does not have a pretty future, a bright future. And so I came to Costilla County to get away from that, because I cannot keep warning people about the danger, the increase in drug problems. It's like a waking knowing or vision or sense of this coming human trafficking epidemic that'll sweep the west coast of the U.S., especially during a grid down situation. I feel like there are armies of darkness preparing for some sort of, and it's not the ISIS invasion that people have been conditioned to believe that it is. It's not ISIS, it's something else. And we've talked about this. But I came here to get away from the West Coast before those events begin. Before those events begin, which I don't believe are going to happen in the next few years, but just a little bit longer than that. This whole situation that we're in on Earth, to switch the topic, I know this is heavy for people to even look at. This whole incarnation, whatever you want to call it, this whole existence that you're having, that I'm having on Earth, is an existence that provides the potential for great evolution. A soul's evolution, to move forward beyond master-slave theology and groupthink, to move beyond illusions of separation based on racial supremacy, thinking that we're either inferior or superior. Because for us to think that we're inferior to someone else is to see someone else as superior. And I know this world is trying to tell me that I am inferior because of where my father was born. So the day I was born, and society won't admit that it tries to tell me that I'm inferior and subhuman. Society has no accountability. The Spanish in San Luis, the whites in Portland or other places where they get caught up in a groupthink. It's not to blame them. I have seen groupthink act as if it's being possessed. And I'm talking about the whole of humankind. The big picture is that the whole of mankind is acting insane. Like it has no emotion at times, or empathy, or understanding of where these wars are going to go. There's an aspect of mass consciousness that's acting robotic. You can call it racist or tribalist, but it's really just like a collective possession of human beings that have lost their fucking mind, that have forgotten the golden rule, that are tapped out of spirit right now. Something's going on our planet where some people are just tapped out of spirit, where maybe they were tapped in 10 years ago and they did have a heart 5 years ago. When I went back to Portland, I saw people change that were different 3 years ago. I wonder in Costilla County, were there people that changed in the last few years that were nice a few years and now they're hateful? What I saw in Portland was that, so something's happening globally. We might talk about what's happening in our own backyard and this county over here, and then we can cross multiple states and see that it's happening over here. We're going through a period in time to where aspects of mankind are losing their very mind. And that is why off-the-grid living is being sought out by the shamans of this world, seeking to connect with spirit and nature. Because we see what's happening to our brothers and sisters of all races in the cities. We see what's happening to them, and we cry for them. We cry for them, for our brothers and sisters, even in the country, and we see the heroin addiction, the meth addiction. Why are you hurting? Why are you hurting yourself? You're surrounded by nature. You're surrounded by mountains. Why are you hurting yourself? As someone that has survived potentially killing my own self 13 years ago when I was 19, a very long time ago, because I recovered a very long time ago from something, and it was becoming politically active and investigating my own spirituality that helped me escape that matrix in 2003, 2004, after 9/11 happened. And I felt like I found my true calling. We'll talk about that in another video. But I wish that other people that are suffering, whether it's hate, anger, abuse, domestic abuse, whether someone's secretly molesting people and they're getting away with it and they're hurting people, there's a root cause for why some people are hurting themselves or hurting others in communities, countries, nations, states, all across this planet. People need to look at what is causing them to hurt so much. And people should seek to live more in harmony with the earth, to tap into their higher self and be grounded. Because those that are not grounded during this particular point in time, it's almost as if they're being controlled, possessed, or directed by something else. We are in Conejos County at the moment. I'm going to be migrating to another spot. What I'm doing is I'm really filling out the vibes in different places in the San Luis Valley. I've been doing this over the course of several years. So my adventure is not limited to Costilla County, nor Oregon, nor the state of Colorado. I look forward to many more years of adventure and travel. And with that, we're going to bring this video to a close. I'm Alex Hansberry, coming to you from Antonito, Colorado, October 23rd, 2015.